I am talking today with Dr. Patricia Hynes, who serves as the Director for the New Mexico Space Grant Consortium and also for NASA EPSCoR. Both programs are funded by the United States Congress and administered by NASA. Pat Hynes is also the Chair of the International Symposium for Personal and Commercial Spaceflight. Hi Pat.
Hi Scott.
As Director of NASA's Experimental Program to Stimulate Competitive Research, which is also known as EPSCoR, could you explain the program and its place in the US space effort?
The NASA EPSCoR program is meant to help faculty in the 25 states and jurisdictions that are involved in the EPSCoR program develop research capability that will allow the faculty to develop relationships with NASA and then go in those relationships, make sure they're writing proposals that are important to NASA and that also can possibly be funded by NASA or other either federal or private companies to grow the research to enable the economic capability of either the state, the region, or the nation. So, in the case of one of the research proposals that we funded that relates to commercial space, if I may use that as an example, this is a project that had two components and two universities involved, and it's under the category of material sciences. And what the first part of the proposal was to set a research structure up to determine structural health monitoring of airframes and eventually space structures, to do crack detection. And the intent of that study was to try and discover where cracks occur in structures, under which conditions, and that's pretty well known research. But then the crack detection part at the very small, minute level where a stress fracture becomes a crack, what we are then going to the second stage of the research was a self-healing situation where we could detect the crack at a small fracture and have the crack actually heal itself with epoxies, and that research was one that we funded and has 3 years ago and has already brought in approximately $8 million worth of funding to the researchers in various aspects of this one project. So it's been a very good example how it pertains to our commercial space business here that is evolving in New Mexico.
Thanks. Next question. You've been working on the FAA Center of Excellence proposal for commercial space transportation. The Federal Aviation Administration Office of Commercial Space Transportation is one of the members of the IAF, and it granted Spaceport America its vertical launch license in January 2009. Just how important is the commercial space sector?
In the global economy, I'm not an economist, but I'm going to just give you my view. In terms of the global economy, the United States has lost its competitive capability because of ITAR. That's just plain and simple, needs to be stated. We have turned over a lot of the business that is in the emerging commercial space industry, development of small satellite capability, to countries outside of the United States, and we are in the process of overhauling ITAR, and we hope that that progresses well. For the competitiveness of this industry to continue to progress to the point where we are developing a new space economy, we have got to understand, while we are aware that there are security needs that all of the participants in space need to address as a community. We also must enable the competitive nature of this industry by not hamstringing ourselves. Having said that, we have the potential to create a new space economy with the increased access to space that is on the horizon, with primarily Virgin Galactic system that will probably come on board in the next 3 to 5 years and send people into space at a higher rate than we've ever flown them since we've been flying and sending people to space since the 1960s. With that on the horizon, the FAA has released a call for proposal for universities to submit their plan for running a center of excellence that would enable the nation to call on this center of excellence to address multiple research needs, and those research needs also address commercial space needs and policy needs, law, medicine. So you see within the scope of work of the release that the FAA just released on Monday, it entails spaceport and launch operations, and I actually have it in front of me because I'm working on it really right now. Space launch operations and traffic management. So it takes into consideration topics that would include integration of the airspace with the commercial space industry, so you could go through the airspace into space and come back down and not interrupt air traffic. So the integration of air and space traffic management is a very important topic right now. And then space launch operations, which includes all the research needs that we would have to address as we have commercial spaceports emerging, and then we have spaceports that will be combination air and spaceports. So we will take existing airports and they will eventually be modified to become spaceports as well. And we have a lot of research requirements to figure out how spaceports can eventually operate more like airports. So that's one of the broad scope of work areas within the call. And then we have launch vehicle systems, payloads, technologies, and operations, and commercial human space flight, and then space commerce. And all of these things have to address the cross-cutting needs for the FAA of safety, testing, and training. I didn't want to get into too much detail, but this is the first time a federal agency in the United States has acknowledged the industry, the commercial space transportation industry, as it really is. This is a transportation industry. This is essentially what we're talking about here in commercial space, as enabling a transportation, the startup of a new transportation industry and its related economy.
Thank you. Do you mind if I ask a supplementary question? Because I was just noticing the news just this week about Virgin, and Will Whitehorn made a comment on the new law in New Mexico that was signed in to legislate the space tourism business, really. That's where I'll phrase it. How important do you think is the legal framework for commercial space?
I am familiar with the legislation that was passed in New Mexico to provide protection from lawsuit for the spaceport and therefore the state of New Mexico, and also the launch operators who will be flying people into space, and that would include Virgin, where the passenger signs an informed consent agreement that indicates that they understand that this is a dangerous enterprise that they are involved in, and they agree to hold the state and the launch operator harmless in the event of an accident that includes their death.
Okay. Is your opinion that the future of the human space program is more likely to be purely commercial in the United States?
The commercial space tourism business will be a catalyzing component of the industry for a while, because for one thing, the launch vehicles that are being developed right now are being rated for human space flight to enable this market for space tourism to develop. The Virgin system will be the first one to come online probably, and their business model is strictly predicated on space tourism. So I am looking at this as space tourism will be a catalyst to enable us to do other things and eventually find the killer app that answers the question, why do it in space? The research potential that we have by gaining more frequent, more reliable, and cheaper access to a part of the atmosphere that will help us understand, for example, global warming in much more detail than we've been able to do, that would be a byproduct of the space tourism industry as it is structured right now. The Center of Excellence, for example, is helping us to characterize the potential impact, could help us characterize the potential impact of human spaceflight by enabling us to gather data by consent from the tourists, but that would be strictly on the part of the tourists. That would not be something that Virgin Galactic is participating in. So setting up those research studies would be a byproduct of the increased access to space. We don't know what those things will be, and because Virgin has been very, very clear that this is a tourism industry that they are involved in, any other types of research that will be done will be done later. So their business model is not predicated on anything other than space tourism, and that has a high enough return in and of itself to enable the industry to grow and enable other countries to be involved, like Sweden, for example. They would like to also have Virgin as a launch operator out of Spaceport Sweden, for example. So does Dubai.
Okay, thank you. You have headed the New Mexico Space Grant Consortium since 1998. Has it been important in shaping the future economy of the state of New Mexico, and can this model be useful elsewhere in the United States and indeed the rest of the world?
You know, it's a very great question, Scott, and I believe the answer is yes to both. And I know the answer is yes to both. To answer the first question, have we been of benefit to the state of New Mexico? And I submitted some information to you on the number of scholarships and fellowships and research projects that we do in the state of New Mexico. And in enabling space-based education, research, and public service, which is our mission, we don't limit ourselves to commercial space in Space Grant. So I take into consideration astronomy, geophysics. I take into consideration education. So we are working with museums and public astronomy projects. So Space Grant is made, and by the way, I have research partners and education partners across the state in the universities, community colleges, gymnasiums, what they call in Europe, high schools. So we have technical colleges involved with us, research universities involved, museums, and the Spaceport America is involved with us. So we have a large group of people involved with Space Grant to help the state. Now, Space Grant is just focused on the state of New Mexico, so I'm only allowed to fund projects in New Mexico or students in New Mexico. But I send my students all over the world, and I do the International Symposium for Personal Commercial Spaceflight, which is truly an international symposium, and that symposium proceeds go to fund students all over the world. My NASA money, I'm able to send students within the United States pretty easily. So I send them to the Jet Propulsion Lab or Kennedy Space Center or Johnson Space Center, as well as to industry, so that they actually do have, I pay for them to work in the summer and we pay their travel. They have life-changing experiences because they get to work on projects like the Mars rover projects right now. I have students that have worked at Kennedy Space Center on these launch complex that SpaceX is building. We have students that have worked with astronauts to try and help sort through some of the training that astronauts have taken at Johnson Space Center and integrate that into research projects that we could disseminate out to the states to enable the states to take some of the data that NASA gathers and parse that data into additional research studies that could get out to the other NASA centers. So there's a tremendous amount of experience we provide students and faculty that actually truly changes their lives and gets them great jobs. And some of our students have started their own companies. It's been a wonderful program. And could it be used as a model across the globe? Yes, I think it can be. It is based on the land grant model, and that was established during Abraham Lincoln's time. And it was meant to provide free public education to people in the states and the territories, public higher education, and also to enable the research that is done at those publicly funded research universities to benefit the states and grow the economies. So in our case, the research that was done in agriculture helped us develop some of the industry we have today, because we have research extension offices in every county in the state of New Mexico, and there's a research extension office in every county, in every state and territory across this nation, being funded by the land grant program. So if you have a problem with your soil, you can take it into a county extension agent, and they will do soil analysis for you, water analysis for you, as well, and you just pay a couple of dollars, or in your case, maybe a tenth of a euro, you guys, to get the analysis done. But it's meant to help us have a very research-oriented, data-driven decision-making capability in the United States to help us grow our economies and to involve our citizens in the products that come from the universities on a daily basis.
Are there any other states doing the same sort of thing as New Mexico, or is it completely unique, in your opinion?
Regarding Spaceport America, it's in commercial space, ours is pretty unique. And because the state of New Mexico, we have a very interesting heritage regarding research in our state. We have Los Alamos Lab is in our state. We also have Sandia National Lab in our state, and we also have White Sands Missile Range here. Robert Goddard, the father of modern rocketry, developed the liquid fuel rocket, over 140 patents that eventually led to this commercial space business as it is today. That technology was patented in New Mexico in the 1930s and 40s. And then when Wernher von Braun came to New Mexico after the Second World War, and we did research on the V-2 rocket, and we eventually, from that, developed the guidance systems and the ICBM program, which eventually spun off into the Apollo program. That research was done 30 miles from where I'm sitting, at White Sands Test Facility, White Sands Missile Range, rather. It was called White Sands Proving Grounds originally. Wernher von Braun came to New Mexico because Robert Goddard was here. And he and Robert Goddard had corresponded with each other way before the Second World War. And von Braun eventually apologized to Goddard for the way he used Goddard's research. So New Mexico's history includes a letter that we wrote to President Kennedy from the Governor Jack Campbell in 1963, requesting the governor requested President Kennedy enable us to establish a commercial spaceport for inland space travel. Way back then, even. We've been at it a long time. But when you're a visionary and a pathfinder, the discipline it takes to make your vision a reality is what the state has begun to have partners like the FAA who realize that this is a new economy that could be emerging, that they can enable if they work with us and we work together, which we do.
It's very interesting that you were mentioning earlier in Sweden and Dubai, because I just noticed a lot of similar news to New Mexico come out of those two places. It's very, very interesting how this is all developing. Anyway, thank you very much, Pat, for your time, and hope to see you at the IEC in Prague.